begin our first round, which will consist of 4 members, 6 minutes each. Mr. Viss, I understand you'll be leading us off. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses today. Ms. Lavery, you just stated at the end of your testimony that you are currently looking at areas of improvement. $3.5 billion of taxpayer money was improperly distributed to ineligible businesses. Who should be fired for making such a big mistake?
This program was built in an unprecedented time of the pandemic, and the deliverable was to deliver at speed and to introduce liquidity into the economy for the benefit of small business. And over 900,000 businesses were supported at a time when they were struggling, when they were facing bankruptcy, when they were challenged, and in fact very challenged to support not only their employees and meet their costs, but also support their families, given many of these organizations are entrepreneurs.
Thank you. The Auditor General is here today in person, I might add, and at our meeting this week, the Auditor General confirmed that the pandemic is not an excuse for proper program delivery or operationalization. So again, I'll ask, who should be fired for wasting $3.5 billion of taxpayer money? Is it you or anyone else at EDC who should be held responsible for wasting this much money?
This was a complex program that provided support to over 900,000 small businesses across Canada. It was provided in an unprecedented time, and it was a very complex program that necessitated a number of changes. The application criteria was changed 5 times. The eligibility criteria was changed 5 times. In fact, the actual loan amount was adjusted as well as was the repayment deadline.
Ms. Lavery,
through the was incredibly important.
Of the, I believe 91 or 92% of all contracts went to a single third party. That's a censure. In other words, the majority of this complex work that was given to EDC to conduct on behalf of Canadians was given to a third party to do. The Auditor General outlined that you had multiple opportunities to undertake a competitive bidding process to ensure accountability of taxpayer money, to ensure that there was value for money, yet at numerous occasions you did not exercise that authority as a CEO to let other companies bid competitively on the work being undertaken on behalf of Canadians. Why not?
That's correct. We did go with a sole source to Accenture on this program. The reason for that was, again, to ensure that this program was delivered at speed to provide $49 billion to small businesses across Canada. That necessitated us moving with a vendor that could provide that support in a very fast time frame and that could work with more than 233 financial institutions across Canada. We did look at RFPing it and would have desired to RFP that. The number of program changes and the asks of us did not allow that to happen.
Okay.
Since then, we have changed our processes.
Ms. Lavery, there are a lot of Canadians who are struggling right now, and the fact that you came to this committee, you've read the Auditor General report, and you cannot point out one single person, maybe it's you, maybe it's someone at Accenture, who should be held accountable for making these decisions. Now, what's even more distressing is that you are in contract with Accenture until 2028, and Accenture is effectively auditing their own work and conducting further business on behalf of Canadians. Is that appropriate? And is that even in line with the conflict of interest guidelines that EDC is subject to?
We are in line with our own guidelines with respect to procurement. And I would ask Mr. Moore, our Chief Financial Officer, to describe the contracting process at EDC.
Correct. So we have a preference for for competitive procurements at EDC. In this case, as Ms. Lavery explained, the timing of the original sourcing with Accenture was such that we did not have time. And given all of the different changes in the program over almost a 2-year period, we were continuing to work under that arrangement. As we got into 2021 and we looked at the collections phase, which is a very important phase.
Mr. Moore, is it not problematic? Is it not problematic that EDC did not do a better job of ensuring value for money of taxpayer dollars by going through a competitive bidding process? Are Canadians asking too much when they want value for their money? Why can't you guys give me a straight answer?
So I think it's important to look at what Accenture delivered as part of this program. So as our vendor, they were critical to developing the technology and the process to receive applications from 233 financial institutions. They helped us deliver on an eligibility program. They helped us deliver technology to receive 2 million documents. They helped us build a loan accounting system to manage over 100,000 loans. We developed a call center that received 450,000 calls over the life of the program when we did it for $300 per loan.
Thank you. And that is the time moving now to Mr. Drouin. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. To our witnesses with EDC, first of all, let me express my disappointment with all of you on such an important meeting that not one of you could bother to show up in person. Ms. Lavery, who did you push back to at Finance to state that you did not have the capacity at EDC to administer this program?
I would like Mr. Winterhall to describe the government processes.
I'm not asking for that. Who did you push back against at Finance that you did not have the capacity to administer the program?
This was a program that was built in a manner that involved a number of departments as well as external.
You expressed to Finance that you did not have the capacity to administer the program, correct?
We discussed the operational risks that would be associated with EDC and what we would need to do to deliver this program.
Right. And who was that with Finance, please?
Resources.
I've asked 4 times now, who at Finance, please? Okay, I didn't ask what officials, department, who exactly at Finance, please? The Deputy Minister, the ADM, the Minister? Who, please?
This was with finance officials below the Deputy Minister level. There were numerous officials from Department of Finance at that point.
Provide those to us. Your memory obviously is shaky at this moment, but provide it to us in writing, please.
Just 1 second. I've taught, so if you could provide those names, then, I mean, Mr. McCauley's asked for that information 4 times, and so the committee will look for that. If you could provide that to us next couple of weeks, please.
I'd be happy to do so.
You have the floor, 3.5 minutes.
Thanks. You mentioned earlier that you advised Finance that you did not have the capacity and you would have to seek outside resources, which ended up being Accenture. Did you advise Finance you'd be using Accenture specifically, or just that you would be contracting it out?
We advised that we would be contracting it out and that it would be a single source, not RFP.
So you knew already you were going to sole source it to Accenture?
We knew already that we needed to move very fast to put these funds in the hands of small business.
Just if I ask a simple yes or no question, would you provide a simple yes or no answer? I think Canadians and parliamentarians deserve that. Did you advise, or did you already know that Accenture would be the recipient of the sole source contract? It's a yes or no answer.
Yes.
Thank you. That's not that tough, is it? Mr. Winterhold, in your response to some of the mess of the sole sourcing with Accenture, the comment was you're updating your procurement policies in light of the audit. I have to ask you, like, you sole sourced to Accenture and allowed a shark of a consulting company to sole source a contract to themselves, dictating to Canadians how much taxpayers are going to pay and for what services. Like, how do you need an audit like this to set up procurement practices that doesn't turn over taxpayers' bank to a company like Accenture? Like, how is it not part of your how is it not part of your regular daily procurement process that you have to have an audit to tell you, don't give a wad of cash, sole source to a company, and let them sole source other work to themselves, dictating to taxpayers how much they were going to charge us.
I'll ask Mr. Moore to speak to our procurement practices and provide some insight.
Well, it doesn't sound like you actually have a procurement practice.
So we do. We have a strong preference to doing RFPs.
Okay, let me stop you right there. You don't have a practice or a rule to get competitive bids. You just have a preference. Were you aware that Accenture was going to sole source and choose themselves for that contract, for the added work?
So the contract that you're referring to for the loan accounting system was a very complicated implementation. When we went ahead with
No question. I would ask you to respect that. I asked you a question. Were you aware that that secondary contract that noted by the Auditor General that Accenture was going to grant that contract to themselves?
So EDC granted the contract. Accenture ran a market scan and identified 24
Were you aware that
companies.
Accenture identified themselves as the person to give the money to?
Accenture identified 24 options. There was one Canadian option, one European option, one Brazil option. We were quite disappointed when the Canadian option actually pulled themselves out of the process.
Okay, were you aware that
We had a
Accenture
European
was sole
option, we
sourcing
had
a
Brazil.
contract to themselves?
We were aware that one of the options had recently been acquired by Accenture. Yes.
Did
we
you not?
our
Did it not set off
analysis.
alarm bells? Like, honestly, I'm trying to grasp in what world that you would not be setting your hair on fire over Accenture taking taxpayers' money and saying, you know, we're going to hire ourselves for this other work, but don't worry, we'll let you know what the fair price we're going to charge ourselves to charge the taxpayers. Like, how could this have happened?
So
Easy.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
EDC made the final decision to go
Kelly, you're
with
done.
the option that was presented to us. It was the lower cost and lower execution risk from among the choices that were available to us to get a loan accounting system built and ready in 6 months was the timing we had at that time.
Turning on to Mr. Nader for 5 minutes, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you to the Office of the Auditor General and our Auditor General for joining us in person, and to the representatives from EDC for joining us virtually. Mr. Moore, could you inform this committee where the EDC headquarters is located?
EDC headquarters is located in Ottawa.
About 450 meters from Parliament Hill, in fact. So it is somewhat disappointing, sir, that considering you personally seem to charge thousands of dollars to show up to your job in Ottawa, you wouldn't take the courtesy of coming to speak with us in person, considering this is such an important matter. And of course, Ms. Lavery, you seem to have no problems charging $18,000 to go to Japan for a couple days, $16,000 to go to South Korea, $19,000 to travel to Australia. But the courtesy of showing up in person to account for this major and damning report is unfortunate. Ms. Lavery, Section 8.52 of the report says that EDC identified and referred 17 cases of fraud to law enforcement. What was the dollar value of those cases?
The dollar value of that was just close to $1 million.
$1 million. And when were those cases referred to law enforcement?
I don't have that information in front of me. I can provide that to the clerk.
Yes, we would like that referred to back to the clerk within an appropriate time. What follow-up has happened since then? Have there been any criminal charges laid on those matters?
The RCMP doesn't provide us with details of their follow-up actions, so I'm not aware of what actions may have been taken.
What encounters have you personally had with the RCMP since those matters were referred?
I've had no encounters with the RCMP.
And are you aware of whether the RCMP has requested any information from EDC since the original referral of those informations?
RCMP works with EDC by producing production orders on EDC with respect to certain files. We have received production orders and the information that has been requested has been provided.
Of the ineligible loans, in the tune of 3.5 billion. Obviously, we know that those loans were partially forgivable. Are you able to provide this committee with how much of that forgivable portion was indeed received by these ineligible recipients, and what efforts EDC has made to collect that forgivable portion from ineligible recipients?
So EDC is in the process of collecting from the ineligible population. We are working very hard on that. We estimate that over $2 billion has been repaid from the ineligible population. We also agree with the Auditor General's recommendation on working with Finance Canada to consider the next steps with respect to the forgiveness that you describe in your question.
So you're not able to provide us with that amount that was the forgivable portion of that amount?
No, I'm not, with respect to the repayment.
Can you follow up with the committee for that information?
Yes, we're working with Finance Canada to determine the actions with respect to that population.
In the AG report, it states, and I'm going to quote from page 23, from April to November 2023, our analysis identified some discrepancies in the hours charged on invoices. Primarily, the EDC seems to have paid an average of 14 hours per agent per day when the call center was only open for 9 hours. EDC did not identify these discrepancies at the time of the payment. So what was the additional cost of those hours that were paid for time that the call center wasn't actually open?
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Moore to describe the documentation challenges we had with that.
Yeah, so I answered this question earlier, but it is a question of documentation as opposed to a billing issue. So the individuals in question were covering the call center. We were continuing to receive calls, and they were working on setting up the collections processes for the future that we are now.
Sounds like GC Strategies was advising those on document orders
from Department of Finance.
Et merci beaucoup. Suivant, c'est Madame.
Thank you, Madame Sinclair Desgagnés. 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to the Auditor General's office for appearing in person. The first question I have is this. It's a question that I would like to have a clear response to, according to the documents that we have. It's a question for EDC. In paragraph 29 of the report, we see that you use an excuse. You had indicated to the AG's officer that you didn't have the expertise or the infrastructure to deliver the program. Did you mention this element, which is quite important, to finance or to GAC?
At the time the program was being considered in March 2020, we indicated that we typically give 300 loans per year. And while we didn't know the extent of the program, that it would reach 900,000 loans at that time, it was certainly of a magnitude that was very different to what EDC does in its day-to-day business. So we indicated that that would be very challenging and that we would need to use third-party support to deliver.
Merci, thank you. But how did you do so? By email, orally, verbally? How did you express this very important idea that you didn't have the expertise or the capacity to manage such a program? And if you could provide the emails, can you do that, please?
So to answer the question, I need to go back to March 2020 when all of us were dealing with the pandemic and had just moved all of our staff to remote work. Everyone was dealing with matters in a very quick way. So this was a process whereby there was daily calls between not only Department of Finance and EDC, but with financial institutions to try and develop this program. So Department of Finance was working on policy as well as participating in daily calls as to how this program could be constructed. So many of the discussions were verbal as it was on a timely basis to try and set up this program.
Je comprends bien. I understand, but I would like to think that for such a significant program, an important program that would be helping some 900,000 Canadian businesses, that you would have the capacity to be able to provide for that possibility. I know it's not the mandate necessarily of VDC, but there is the principle of covering yourself, of being able to recover. So that said, if you could give us any document as to what you recall from this first step, it would be appreciated. Now, concerning the various control processes, in February of this year, you appeared before committee and you said that what had occurred with Accenture, the news came out in the English newspapers that you were using a sole source contract, this single business for all this work, without any type of competitive process. 31 contracts with a total value of $208 million. Ms. Lavery, 19 contracts for some $300 million. So how did you get to the ultimate figure?
Thank you. I will pass the question to Mr. Moore.
Yep. So at the time, the $208 million reference was actually now $209 million. So it's the actual spend as opposed to the contract value. So apologies if that was confusing at the time of the February committee. So the actual spend, as you see here, is indeed $209 million with Accenture. The number of contracts at the time was probably just a mistake. So apologies for that. You have the actual numbers here. In terms of the overall contract value, it is indeed 313 and the spend is indeed 209 million.
Merci beaucoup. Passons.
Thank you very much. Speaking about your call center, Mr. Moore, you brought up stats with respect to this. The call center got contracts totaling $27 million. There were over 400,000 calls that were made to that centre, if I recall correctly. We, members of Parliament and the Canadian Independent Businessmen's Association mentioned that they had difficulty contacting anybody, speaking to someone about this issue. You said that you received a significant volume of calls and the businesses in question did not get any replies. But they tell us that they had tried to contact you over and over again, that is to say your call centers, but they were unable to get in touch with the call center. But your version said otherwise. So what is the reality here? Can you give us the verification of the number of calls and calls answered from these centers?
Perhaps I will take that question just to describe the call center process and how that actually worked. So when we first established the call center, it was in response to an increasing number of calls from potential loan holders, in fact, all the applicants to the process. The number of calls far exceeded what we anticipated at that stage, and that necessitated us continuing to add resources to the call center to be able to respond to it. We were monitoring a statistic which was lax. We actually had to stop taking calls directly because, to your point, people were not able to get through directly on the line. So we moved to a callback model and we were monitoring the number of calls in that queue. So people did receive a call. It was not when they called in because they were called back. Their call was returned. But at the peak of the activity in the call center, that callback queue reached over 22,000 businesses who were in the queue for a callback. So it was a very significant effort and at a very stressful time for these businesses. We had instances where businesses were calling in and suggesting their only path forward was in fact a suicide option. We had businesses who were certainly looking at bankruptcy, who were really struggling. So we put more resources to continue trying to address the needs of those businesses and worked very closely with organizations like CFIB who were hearing that from their members.
Est-ce qu'il y avait une deuxième question?
Do you have a second question? No. No? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to